Hey there, everyone. It's Dr. Miller. Get my camera right. Today, we're going to be talking about values. So, one of the themes for this course is applying, or the main theme, I guess, is learning about how to apply psychological concepts to improve your own life and exploring core values and kind of what are the things that drive you and motivate you. To be the kind of person that you want to be, ideally. Those are the things that I focus on a lot when I'm working with clients in my private practice, because a lot of times our values maybe don't match up with our behaviors, right? So you may have had some instances of this where you would say, okay, one of my personal values or one of the things that I inspire to or aspire to be like, one of the ways I aspire to be as a human being is thoughtful, right? Or loving in my relationships with people. But sometimes, or even more often than not, maybe you're so stressed out or that there's something else going on that in your relationships with people, maybe it's your family or a significant other, you're not like as kind or as thoughtful as you'd like to be. Or maybe as a student, you feel like your personal values, you would like to be on time, not procrastinating, getting your work completed on time at a high quality level, right? Like those are the things that maybe all students, or maybe you in particular, would say, I value these things. These are some core values about being a student that I would like for people to notice in me. I would like to be able to live according to those values, but I remember being a student too, and a lot of times there are things that get in the way of living according to those core values. So when I work with clients, we kind of try to identify those areas where you have a value, but your behavior is not meeting that value, because that creates a disconnect, right? Like a disconnect between who you ideally would like to be and who you perceive yourself to actually be. And that can make you feel bad, right? You can feel like you're failing. It can lead to depression or anxiety in terms of like, why am I not able to behave this way? What's wrong with me? Am I a bad person? Am I a failure? Things like that. So you can see how it's important to identify and know your core values so that you can let that guide your behavior in situations. You can remind yourself of your core values, what's most important to you. And that can help you be the kind of person that you want to be, which will lead to more happiness, more fulfillment, and more satisfaction. And who doesn't want all of those sorts of things, right? So today we're going to go through some of the worksheets that you have in your module. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here. What screen do I want to start with? Let's go. I don't have the right screen up. Bear with me 1 second. So we're going to start with the brief list of core values. And then we're going to work into the values card sort and the values bullseye. And I'm going to kind of show you guys how to use these things so that when you're completing the assignments and assessments for this week, you'll understand what it is that I'm looking for and expecting. So this first thing we're going to look at here is the list of values. This is from Brene Brown, who is a very popular, she's actually a researcher about things like vulnerability and shame. And basically now she's kind of a motivational speaker kind of person. Like she's big on Oprah, but she did start out, and I still think she is an academic who does research. I think she has a doctoral degree in some sort of like, I don't think it's psychology, but it's a related field, maybe social work, something like that. But so she has kind of provided a brief list of potential value words, because sometimes when we're thinking about our values, it's hard to know, well, what does that mean? Like, what is a value? And so it's helpful to kind of just look at a list of words. You may have so let's just stick with like being a student and some values that you might have as a student. Of course, some of those might be achievement, Let's see, being the best. I don't know, maybe if you want to be the best. Ambition. Um, let's see here, commitment. So you might want to be committed to your goal in the way that you are pursuing a degree or pursuing good grades in your course. You want to show commitment to that. It might be something like excellence. Um, let's see what else. Hmm, resourcefulness. I don't know. These aren't like the greatest ones for being a student. Maybe self-discipline. You want to show some self-discipline as a student. Um, you want to be successful. You want to work well as a team with your classmates when you're doing group projects. So these are some of the things that you might have in terms of your values as a student, right? And sometimes things might get in the way. So, but first, before that, we have to differentiate between values and goals. So one of the best ways I've heard values explained in terms of contrasting that with a specific goal that you might have as a student is that a value is a direction that you're heading in, right? So like if you think about traveling around the world and you think, I'm going to travel west. Well, you can travel west forever and you'll still be able to go west, right? Like even if you pass the point where you started, you're still able to go west, right? There's never an end point to that direction that you're going because it's always, you can always go further. You can always do more in that area. And that's kind of how a value is. So if I have the value of excellence or self-discipline or holding myself to a high standard of achievement, that's not something that will end, right? Like that's not something that ends when I achieve a specific goal. I'll never say, okay, well, I've done it. I have achieved ambition. I have achieved my value of excellence. So now I can stop, right? That doesn't quite make sense. But what you can do is within your value structure, you can have goals that are in line with those values, right? So let's say you have a goal or a value of excellence, and that might be your own personal version of excellence, whatever that means to you. Maybe it's like achieving your potential, right? So you probably won't ever get to the final point where you've achieved all the potential that you're ever able to achieve. But in service of achieving your potential, you might say, well, I think I have the potential to graduate from college with a bachelor's degree. Okay, cool. That can be a goal within achieving my potential. I think I have the potential, I believe I have the potential to get mostly A's and B's in my courses every semester. Well, that's another goal within that value of achieving your potential, right? So once you hit that goal, it doesn't mean that you've done it, you've achieved your potential, because you will always have more potential potential successes or potential areas of excellence that you can achieve. But within your value, you have goals that help you kind of like prove or they help you move in the direction of your values. So those are some things that we'll be working on within this values module. Um, and this, we will build on the idea of values in the coming weeks as well, because you're going to take those values and think of some goals for yourself. You're going to look at some areas in your life that you might not be living according to your values as well as you would like to. You're going to choose an area of that to work with your small group. You're going to set a goal for yourself and you're going to work on achieving that throughout the semester, right? So we're going to practice in this course um, defining a value, setting a goal that's in service of that value, and then how do you actually do the steps to achieve that goal. That's going to be the crux of your group project. Your group will help support you and give you accountability and feedback on your goal and advice and just positive Good vibes, right? All right. So now that you've maybe familiarized yourself with some of the words that can be values words, we'll start by looking at the card sort. So even for me, when I look at that list of values, I'm like, gosh, I mean, each one of those things are a good thing, but I don't know how to tell which one is most important to me personally. Like, yeah, I'd like to be everything on that list, but some of these things are more important to me personally compared to other things. So, the next step of the values exploration is kind of narrowing down your values to specific value words, especially in each area of your life. So, we have here, it's kind of like a card sort. So you could, if you wanted to, go ahead and print these out and cut them into the little cards. So, and then you have categories like important to me, very important, not important at all. So those would be like kind of the headings, and then you would cut out the actual value card and with the word and definition on it. Um, and then you could sort those into the categories of important, very important, not important. And then that would kind of help you get an idea of which ones are important to you. What I kind of like to do, maybe in addition to or instead of, is to make a little, just write down a little list of, and I don't know how to share two windows at once. Let's see if I can do that. I'll just change my screen real quick. So I've made a little document that shows the different areas of life. You may have different values in different areas, right? So one thing that I've found helpful is to identify values for personal growth, like how do I want to be in terms of just like who I am as a person. And then relationships and family, like how do I want to be in my behavior towards my family members, my spouse, my kids, my parents, my sister, people like that, or just friends, like other people that I have relationships with. How do I want to be in my work life as a professor? What kinds of values do I think are most important to helping me be a successful professor? And then finally, how do I want to be in terms of like my leisure time, the kinds of things that I do to invigorate myself or to relax or just enjoy life in general, right? So these are the different categories that that you might work with in terms of trying to figure out which particular values are important to you in which particular area. So now we'll go back to the card sort screen and we'll look again. So it starts here. You see the little value cards are numbered. We start with acceptance. Now this says acceptance is to be accepted as I am. However, you can't control that, right? Like you cannot control whether people are going to accept you or not. However, what you can control is whether you are accepting of yourself and other people. We all know people who feel badly about themselves or they're highly critical of themselves or other people. And we already talked a bit about this a bit in our self-talk video from the other week in terms of the sometimes it's really difficult to accept yourself and your flaws and then also to see your own strengths. And it's easy also to be critical of other people, judgmental, unhappy with how you are, with how other people are. So this is actually a really big one for me is the value of acceptance, right? So the more you accept yourself, the more you are able to be satisfied and happy. This doesn't mean that you like love every bit of yourself, but it does mean that you you can say, I am who I am. I'm a good person. I'm valuable despite my flaws, and so are other people. Nobody else is perfect, and they are worthy of my respect and love, regardless of their imperfections. So to me, that one is really huge, and that's both in my personal growth area, and actually, it's probably in every situation, like dealing with myself and with other people. So personal growth, relationships, and work. um, Acceptance is a really big one for me. So I would write that down in my categories. Now, you can look through. I mean, there's a whole batch of cards here. So I'm going to put acceptance on my list, on kind of like my top 10 list. Achievement is another big one for me, in terms of, especially in terms of like work, and personal growth. And also in hobbies, as well, because I like to pursue, I guess, goal directed hobbies like music or painting, something where I can improve myself, right? So that would be one for me. Just briefly looking through here. Autonomy, it's a big one for me, especially in my work, and just my personal goals. I like to be independent. I like to have control of my situations and kind of be in charge of what's happening to me. Caring. Yes, that's another. Man, I'm finding a lot here just right off the bat. So obviously, I'm a psychologist, so part of my work is about caring about other people, and I that's something I value in relationships. So I'll put that one down on my list. I feel like compassion kind of goes along with that. Um, let's see here. Let's do excitement. I do, especially in my leisure life, I like to have a lot of different things to do. I get bored with the same old routine. Um, Family is a value, of course. So I'll put that on mine. So hopefully you can see where I'm going here. You can choose as many of these as you want, right? So it can be from this list, it can be from a different values list, whatever it is. Another big one for me is I'll choose knowledge. I love to learn things. I love to research and contribute to knowledge as well. Let's see what else here. Openness. Yes, I want to be open to new experiences and ideas. Purpose. Yes, I love to have a feeling of purpose in my life. Ta-da-da-da-da. Yeah, so you can see, you get the drift, right? You can add any values you want, and add those in the appropriate categories. And then once you have your list made, then you can kind of go over to each category, and I'll go back to sharing my little document here. So I've written down a few in each area. Now, if you have, say, like 10 in each category, then you're going to need to narrow those down, right? Like maybe to the top one or two in each area, because these values are going to really, if you do it properly, these kind of values are really going to guide your behavior. You can use them every day to refer back to and say, if I do this, is that in the direction of my value, or is that taking me away from my value? So let's say you are having a lot of projects at school, and I'm going to stop sharing. So let's say that you are working in the area of just like your educational values, and you've got a lot of homework to do, and you really don't feel like doing it. I get there a lot of the time. I remember being a student, and I don't know that there was ever a time that I really felt like doing homework or like the readings I was assigned. I never felt like doing it. So, what I would usually do, unfortunately, especially in my undergraduate years, was I would procrastinate until I had an anxiety or like a sense of feeling motivated. And then I didn't necessarily like want to do it or take pleasure in doing it, but I knew that I had to do it or there would be, it wouldn't turn out well for me. So I think that's what happens a lot of times for students is that either when you start thinking about homework, especially if it's like maybe it's a boring assignment that's just not stimulating, you don't want to do it at all, or it's a difficult assignment that you're like, uh, I don't even know where to start on this, then rather than stop for a minute and think about, okay, what are my values as a student, right? This is difficult in the moment when you're having like a lot of uncomfortable feelings of maybe anxiety or boredom or just like wanting to avoid that homework, right? It's hard to say, okay, I'm going to take a second. I'm going to think about what kind of student I ideally would like to be. And if I go watch Netflix right now instead of working on this homework, is that activity in the direction of my values as a student, or is it taking me away from my values as a student? So, um, and the answer really depends, right? So, like, if you say, I'm gonna go watch one episode on Netflix, and then maybe, like I'll be in the right mind frame to come back and I just need to take a break for a minute and then I'll come back and work on this and finish this homework today. Or, I have a plan for when I'm going to do this homework and it's not procrastinating. So this is not necessarily the time. Well, okay, that's fine. That's maybe that's in service of another kind of value of like taking care of yourself, relaxation, stress release, different things like that. But if you're just doing that to avoid the uncomfortable feeling of having to do your homework, that's not really in service of your values, right? Like it's not in service of that value of maybe being a successful student or managing your time well, or reaching your full potential, right? If you procrastinate and avoid on a regular basis, you're probably not turning in your best work or reaching your potential. So that's how we can use our values, and that's why it's important to know what your values are. So the last thing we'll take a look at, and it's the last worksheet that we have included this week, um, would be the values bullseye worksheet. So similarly to the idea that I had on my own list of values, this kind of separates um, the values areas into work, education, relationships, personal growth, and leisure. So you already have completed some of this. So you should be able to fill in this worksheet with at least one or two values in every under each four of these sections here. Um, and maybe I would say just write about, reflect a little bit on what each of those values means to you and what that would look like if you were living according to those values. So, like for instance, for leisure, I really value music and art. And I would say my values in these areas are to be using my leisure time, not just to like veg out and be brainless, but to stimulate my mind, my creativity, my imagination. And so music and art help me do that, right? I think that's a good, healthy way to use my leisure time. That's not to say I don't ever just like totally give myself a relaxing break, but I don't spend all of my leisure time that way. But sometimes I get stressed and overwhelmed, and I just don't feel like playing music or doing art because it just feels too effortful. So if I had creativity and stimulation in my leisure box, I could say, when I have some leisure time and it's like I'm faced with either playing music for a little while or just like putting on another episode of my favorite show for hours, that evening, then probably, if I were being honest with myself, playing music would be more in service toward the values that I really hold dear in my heart more than Netflix, right? Like, so playing the music would be, I could remind myself that that is what is important to me, and that might help me take the step to actually behave in the way that I want. Now, in each area of our lives, this is the bullseye that they are talking about in this values bullseye worksheet. And you can see that each area of life has kind of a segment. And you see they've labeled here the center of the bullseye is, you can say, I'm living fully according to the values that I cherish. And then here on the outer ring of the bullseye, this would be the area of like, I really am not living according to my values very much at all. So if your value is hard work and achievement, but you're spending most evenings like procrastinating by playing video games, watching Netflix, hanging out with friends, and you're not working hard and doing the things that you should be to be successful in school, then you probably would be more here in this work education. You might be more out here on this outer ring. Maybe it's half and half, right? Like maybe some nights you're able to motivate yourself to do your work and do a good job on it. And maybe some nights you're not doing that. Now, I don't know very many people who always are living fully according to their values. To me, it's always a process. It's something that you work toward, you aspire toward, but more often than not, you're probably at least going to be out in this, second or third ring, even if you're doing really well for yourself. No one's perfect. And I don't think anyone lives perfectly according to their values every second of the day. And that's okay. Like, that's not the expectation. But as long as you're kind of like always refocusing yourself toward getting more toward that inner bullseye, then you'll be in good shape. You'll be on track and you can feel good about yourself, right? Like, even if you're not perfectly living according to your values, you can say to yourself, well, I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer to that feeling. I can feel good about that. Baby steps are good, right? Baby steps are better than nothing, or baby steps backward, further and further away from your values and aspirations. So that's what you should do for this worksheet, is go through your values in each of these areas and kind of reflect, how fully am I living according to that value? In my leisure time, in my relationships, in my personal health and well-being, my growth as a person, and in my work and educational life. Looking at those values, what would it look like if you were living fully according to the value of hard work and excellence and achievement? Or in your relationships, if your values are like intimacy and trust and maybe kindness, respect, honesty, generosity, what would that look like if you were fully living according to those values in your relationships? Would you be calling your parents more often? Would you be reaching out to friends more often to say, hey, are you okay? Is everything going all right? Let's have a conversation. I want to listen to you. Would your relationships look like that? And compare that to, what do they look like right now? How close are you to that ideal value? And then for each of the values that you've identified here at the top, just write that value in on whichever rung you feel like you are, um, on the bullseye in each category. Okay, so what if you maybe choose two things in each category to focus on, and then assess and reflect, where am I? How fully am I living according to that value in this area? So that is how you will complete this assignment, and you will need to complete this for your journal topic this week. And I look forward to reading about that. And you might also be discussing this in your small group this week. So make sure you're focusing on identifying your values, because this is a very important part of your group project, and for the whole semester, and also for the discussions and reflection for this week. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.